Thank you. Ah, fabulous. We're easing on into the day today. Yeah, how is everyone? Good. Well, good. We're creating good stuff already. All right, so I remember when I was a little girl, my favorite story that my parents would read to me over and over was the story about the little engine that could. Do you remember that story, right? I loved it so much. I had her read it, my mom read it and read it and read it over and over. In case you've forgotten, because it was a long time ago, it's a story about a little engine that volunteered to pull this long, heavy train way up, up a steep grade. It was the only one that said, yes, I can. And so as it's huffing and puffing all the way up the mountain, it's saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And then as it gets close to the summit where it's really steep, you think it's gonna not make it. It's slowing way down, but it's still affirming. I think I can, I think I can. And that affirmation is the thing that gets it over the other side where it's saying, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. Love it, right? This is a book written in 1930. And it's all about the power of affirmation. But you think about it, okay, so the Fillmores were around at that time. New Thought was gaining momentum at that time, and it all had an impact. It all had, it influenced popular culture. I remember my mom would affirm this to me as I was going through the day and I hit an obstacle or, came upon a task that was difficult. She would affirm it with me to kind of make it fun, and so that I wouldn't give up. And so when I had kids, you better believe I got that book out and read it to them and affirm with them when they were having a difficult day. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. It's a beautiful, sweet story that really, when you think about it, helps children activate their power of will. That power of will. That's one of our 12 powers that Charles Fillmore, in case you're somewhat new to Unity, Charles Fillmore identified 12 power centers and our energetic centers, kind of access points to specific qualities of our spiritual power. And we all have them. We all have them already. It's just that most people are unaware of them, and so they're not active or they're using them incorrectly, right? But when we become aware of them and learn to use them and align ourselves with the highest divine presence within us, those powers can really become our superpowers. No kidding. So this whole week we've been talking about this power of will. It's our power to decide, to commit to be willing to. And last week we talked about it in terms of the 30-day no plastics pledge that we took, that many of you signed, this 30-day no plastic pledge. We committed to doing something that we feel is for the good of the whole, for the good of humanity, for the good of the planet. And then we commit to doing, seeing it through the full 30 days, even when it gets inconvenient, and it's really getting inconvenient. And then willingness, a willingness to follow divine guidance, to doing what's necessary to accomplish this. And if you haven't signed the 30-day no plastics pledge, I think there's Mary's at the back table. There's a sign-up sheet there that you can sign and join us in this. And we have more information on the website that shares about why this is important and really what you can do. So here's the thing. A lot of people get the power of will confused with willpower, right? And that's understandable. But really, the willpower is more about this thing that you muster when you have set a goal for yourself and it's getting challenging. You know, it usually is accompanied by a lot of tension, you know, a lot of doubt, you feel like you're kind of fighting against your lower instincts. And then eventually, you know, you kind of just get tired of the battle and give in and just give me that piece of chocolate cake anyway. Give it to me. Or you use your willpower to kind of muscle through a goal that you set for yourself that may not be something that actually brings you happiness. May not be something that, you know, is good for others, or good for the planet. So in contrast, the power of will is our power to, again, choose, to commit, to be willing to accomplish a worthy goal that is in alignment with our highest spiritual nature, our higher spiritual self. That's where thy will be done, the biblical thy will be done comes in. Not my will, but thine. So in unity, you know, we don't, thy and thine is, we're not talking about a God outside of us, a superpower, you know, in heaven somewhere that knows what's best for us, even if it hurts. No, it's this one universal love and wisdom that is within us. And when we connect with that presence, when we really connect and feel that presence, our will merges with thy will. And we engage in this beautiful dance together of human and divine as one. That's kind of what Chris Geith was talking about earlier this month. He was sharing about that. So, referring to the passage in the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, Linda Martellowitz says in her book, Divine Audacity, she says, in the awareness, and she's talking about the awareness of the highest divine within us, our will is the will, the universal idea of eternal life, infinite love, ever-present wisdom, and all that is good prevailing. Our will is for the universal ideal, heaven, to permeate the stuff and substance of our human existence on earth. Our will is for the universal ideal, or heaven, to permeate the stuff and the substance of our human existence on earth. That's the highest prayer, really. Because you're saying, you're calling forth those eternal truths, those divine qualities to be manifest here in your experience in this three-dimensional realm. That's really the power, that's using the power of will correctly. Now, of course, the power of will in the hands of the ego can be a whole different thing. It can actually translate into somebody being bossy, obstinate, willful, you know, somebody who's not open to any other ideas, opinions, my way, the highway kind of attitude. You probably know people like that. Maybe you even have been that person before, way before in the past. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, you know, those with an undeveloped will, you know, that translates into being indecisive, wishy-washy, unable to make a choice. You probably know some of those people too. So, what we want to do is make sure that our will is connected with the highest divine will that is within us, the highest divine wisdom that is within us, and then exercise that will. Work it. Exercise it. And when we do that, we can create some really exciting possibilities, new possibilities for us. So another place that people get confused about this, power of will, is when bad things happen that you can't explain, because they seem to come out of nowhere, right? And traditional Christianity, we might say, well, that's God's will. That's God's will, that person was struck by a car and, is now paraplegic for the rest of their lives. COVID is God's will. No. No. There's not a power outside of us, some supernatural being that's sending us tragedies to try us, to challenge our faith, like Job. Because there is no outside power, you see. There's no outside otherness. It is that universal, one love intelligence that holds the entire universe in perfect order and expresses as each of us. Expresses as each of us. So, you may well say, well, why are all these seemingly bad things happening all at once? The climate crisis, COVID, out of control, Haiti, Afghanistan, all of it. Why is that? It's a puzzler. I admit, that's a puzzler. And I think it was Cheryl and I were talking after the service last week, and we were talking about, how everybody kind of has a theory about this. All the spiritual gurus and the astrologers and, the metaphysicians. Everybody's got a theory about why this is. I don't think anybody knows, really. I certainly don't. What I do know is that when humanity is under the influence of the collective unconscious belief in separation, that we're separate from source, that we're separate from each other, those beliefs begin to show up. Thoughts are creative, right? And collective thought, collective belief is really powerful. Also, as I was talking about last week, when humanity acts from a consciousness of, it's all about me, what's in it for me, all about me, rather than from a consciousness of, how can I be of service to the whole? How can I be of service to the collective good? That begins to show up as well, right? That shows up. So, Mother Teresa once said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. If we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten we belong to each other. That's it in a nutshell. That's that, African concept of Ubuntu that we've talked about before, Ubuntu. We belong to each other. We're all one. So it's not God's will. It's the folly of humans or the ignorance or the unawareness, the lack of awareness. That's why I always think that awareness is the key, is the answer. When we all become aware of that we're all one, that we're all connected, we're all in this together, that we're all creative beings. That's such a freeing thing. So, but back to the power of will. Okay, so now the first part of this is decide. How do we know that the goal or the path that we're choosing is indeed the highest divine wisdom? How do we know it's coming from that and not the ego? Sometimes it's difficult to tell. But discerning that is really important. Before we invest our time and our money and our resources and our time into something, we want to answer that question. So this is where we want to carve out time for ourselves and turn within and connect, listen, get quiet, get still, whatever it is for you that gets you to that place of hearing, being able to hear the inner voice, the divine voice within. Sometimes meditation, sometimes contemplation, journaling, walking the labyrinth. We just so happen to have a pretty fabulous labyrinth out there that's really good for that. Chanting, praying, whatever it gets you connected with that. That's what you want to do first. You want to really get to a place where you can hear that divine guidance. And get there first before you commit and, do what's necessary to achieve that, right? So then now the next thing is commitment. I think the most accurate way to describe that, I heard somebody say it this way, that commitment is a single-pointed, open-hearted focus. Wholehearted, that's what it is. Single-pointed, wholehearted focus. Is that good? It's that focus that can carry us through when the going gets challenging. That focus. That kind of commitment. How many of you here used to smoke? I did. And how many times did you try to quit? Yeah, most people try to quit a bunch of times before they make the choice. I'm making the choice. I'm committing to a smoke-free life. That's really what it is. Committing to a smoke-free life because that is the thing that is going to allow you to make that permanent change in your life. Really making the decision. The same is true if you've chosen a life of sobriety after, years of whatever, drug, alcohol abuse. It's all about that choice, making that choice, right? That decision, that commitment to living a different life, walking a different path, and you make that choice and there's no going back. There's no negotiating. It's not willpower. It's the power of will in the sense that you are choosing a path that you will not waver from. That single-pointed, wholehearted choice that can open up a brand new life for people. And this is true for any path that we choose, any really worthy goal that we want to set for ourselves. It's this kind of choice and wholehearted commitment. So then the last thing is willingness, right? So after we have made the choice where we're connected with the highest divine self within us, highest divine wisdom, we've committed that single-pointed, open-hearted, wholehearted focus, right? We want to infuse all of that with willingness. A willingness to be open to divine guidance. A willingness to be open to the flow of life that could be bringing us new gifts. Willingness is kind of an acceptance of what life is bringing us and to see the opportunity there. To see that opportunity and to go for it. Willingness to go for it. To do what's necessary. Willingness really, and when we exercise that willingness, it keeps us in the creative flow. That's where we want to be, right? The creative flow. New ideas, we recognize opportunities, we see things that are, we see connections, we see synchronicities. The more we see that, the more we experience it, the more it shows up in our lives. So, When we learn to work with this power of will, we really learn how it works, and we're connected with it. We're connected with that divine guidance within us. We're working this. It can really be a powerful force that can help us create new, wonderful possibilities for us and for the world. Power of will. Will you? Can you? Say, I can. I thought you could. Namaste.